Okay, so I've started a couple of times and now I just need to speak to me and the heck with all that other stuff. So the fact that there's female bodies that house an imbalance of very masculine energy that is way out of balance, and it is very, very, very dominant in its masculine energy, and worse, it's in its upside down, least attractive, most offensive version of masculine energy. And when it's housed in a a female body, and it looks like a mother or talks like a mother, it takes on roles of, that are considered to be the compassionate roles, the caregiver roles, Nana, or the sister, the auntie, or something along those lines, or the trusted elder or something. That can get real polluted for the children of that to understand what they're looking at. And I know for me personally, I had a hard time growing up because the very person that was supposed to be protecting me was the one that was doing the least to do so, and was largely uninvolved with my care. Pretty much, I learned how to take care of myself pretty early, and definitely had to fend for myself in the emotional realm. And yet it always seemed very weird to me that the woman designated as, the mom position, isn't she supposed to be the one that does all that? Yeah, well, I came wired differently. We call it, neurodivergent in the medical community. However, starseed, light worker, and a Blu-ray indigo, it needs to have a different understanding for me to be able to go forward and understand what all that mess was. And so even as a child, though I was packaged differently and understood that this is very strange, I don't understand, why is this person using me as a bait dog, and throwing me into this fight with this man, that's not my father, and yet you want me to call him daddy? I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time with this. And yet whenever I would speak up and say, why do you let this man do this, I would get smacked by my mother. So that was a very stupid scenario. I can tell you, as a 4-year-old, the first time I got smacked for asking a question such as, why do you let that man do that to me? I was 4 or 5, and I got smacked in the face for daring to question the authority of the mother who gave birth to me. How dare you, were the words, the actual words, how dare you? And I thought, what? But yet it was hugely confusing. And even worse is that I had a sister living in the same home, and she never, not once did she ever fall out of line. A golden child, I guess, wouldn't. And the scapegoat, would have to be asshole me, I guess. That's what I was told, and that's what I kind of believed, and yet knew that you can blame this on me, and you can say that it's me. However, it's you. It's that, and, why are you harsh in my world? If you could just be sitting in your inconsistency and your bullshit and not have to push it my way or have any expectation for me to have respect for you or to want to play this game with you, can we not just coexist in this place? No, we cannot, because it wasn't just enough to have the control or throw me into a situation as the bait dog, here, deal with that dad that I don't want to, or deal with the rage and the anger and the repressed whatever that was. You go deal with that, and it's your problem to learn how to handle that. That was okay based on the weak women who were standing around me. Never mind the tool bag man that was being used as a pawn. Absolutely as a pawn. I have more respect and a lot more ability to understand the position of the man that was shoved into my life when I was 4 or 5 years old. I have more understanding of his position now as an adult, 50-something years later, looking back at that and saying, you didn't stand a chance, dude. A disenfranchised man who had already an issue with his mother, and then the weird situation where he got taken out of, birth situation. Mother died during birth. He came in with some baggage and then got pawned off to a sister, and I don't know if he ever did know that that wasn't his mom and dad. Now, why somebody on my side of the equation knew that, I don't know. I just started hearing all of this not too many years ago and going, oh my God, no wonder. So this matronly person enters his life, my mother, enters his life, and she's looking like or acting like, not his mother, she's acting like his wildest dream come true, very provocative, very seductress, very much moving with the lower nature, if you know what I'm saying. And in an environment where that would be absolutely expected, there wasn't a whole lot of virtue where she was hanging out and where he was patronizing, if you know what I'm saying. So, but yet this is where we went shopping for the next daddy, when the first one didn't work out, and we don't want either of the children that have been spawned from this situation, nor do we want the one that's coming with the new situation, but we'll take care of that. Okay. And so I looked at that man today and I think, wow, you got played, man. You got played, and your payment for being able to come in and help this person rise up on your back, help you put into this system again and again and again, is that you get to be drug addicted, you get to be an alcoholic and a rager every once in a while, as long as you don't put it, my way, put it over there with that little one over there, the scapegoat. She's the one that's supposed to take that. And the golden child stands over in the corner, cowering in the corner, going, I wish you wouldn't do that. I wish you wouldn't do that. If only you would just. And yet secretly hating the scapegoat, secretly hating. There was no secret, by the way. I knew my sister hated me. I knew my mother didn't love me, or if she did, she had a real strange fucking way of saying it. And I understood that as a child. However, I did not understand, how do I deal with this? I'm having to cope with a lot of emotions, a lot of trauma, a lot of assault early on of a very nasty lower nature. So my mother wasn't protecting me from the get-go. She didn't want me. So I'm pretty sure that, any attempt to try to spare me or to keep me out of danger was not on her mind. She would be okay if I just went away. I'm certain of that because I am away, and there's been zero contact with that, nor was there any play to say, oh no, let me try to fix this. So it was me that was sitting around for the longest time trying to figure out, what the hell is this? Because I don't understand how to deal with all of the emotions that are coming up, all of the trauma that's already happened, the fear that I feel. Who do I talk to? Whenever the person that I'm supposed to, that you're the authority figure in this house where one of us doesn't belong, one of us isn't related, one of us is, not like the others as in blood, you're the one, and I have a sibling who is, constantly trying to get me in trouble or cause me harm or to say shit, throw shit, do shit. She tried to kill me when we were like 2 or 3 years old. Of course, as an adult a few years ago before I split from that shit, I said, why did you do that? Cut my arm. You see that? That's a scar. I was like 2. That's a hella fucking big scar to have from when you're 2, that somebody, like your sister, cut you with a piece of glass that she's broken off of a clock, and we're sitting around unsupervised. And this is the woman that I grow up with, along with the mother, that is okay with all of it, or is feigning some sense of, oh no, I just don't know what I'm doing here. It made a whole lot more sense to me why the men dipped out, and why they were allowed to dip back in very strategic ways that did not serve me at all. Didn't serve the sibling either. However, she was playing, good girl, so there's nothing I can do to save that, help that, or do anything except survive. And find a way in all of these assaults every single day of my life, something, comment about my weight, my height, my something, the way I looked, the way I spoke, the way I moved, the way I spent my time. I was fat, I was lazy, I was stupid, I was disorganized, that it was constant. And I never found any reprieve anywhere except in my own space by myself, because there was no safe place. School wasn't safe. I was a minority white, which would have been okay, except that everybody wanted to fight over who was, going to be in charge of shit. And that's just something that's never made sense to me. And as a light worker and a healer, it's not going to make sense to me. However, until I could get to that information and stop having people block me from answering that knowledge within me, it was going to be really hard, very tight for me to try to understand what the hell is this, because it was perpetually going. Now, I don't have any proof per se. However, I can tell you that the woman that calls herself my mother, she's a very dark woman. She comes from a very dark past, and I have been gifted, I suppose, gifted? Yeah, I was gifted with the truth of get out of there and don't attach any longer to this. And I never really attached to her in the beginning because she didn't want me. She didn't want my sister, and she didn't want the baby that came after me. So, and took care of that one differently. So I guess I'm lucky that I made it. No, I was not lucky. I was designed to be there, apparently, and I'm not going to argue the fact that I chose to be there and then I was brought into that family. What I will not say, though, any longer is that it is okay for a light worker, an indigo, and anybody, I don't care who they are, to sit in that kind of bullshit, trauma, and terror, and fear, and feeling no safety whatsoever in any area of their life. It is not okay for that person to sit there being indoctrinated, practicing with people practicing dark arts and weird shit around them, blurring their vision and obscuring what they need to know in order to get up and go from there. The ability to block another person happens very easily in a maternal relationship, especially one that's got some whole, weird queen, evil queen vibes that, a mother who is jealous of her daughter, or who treats their other daughter, their older child, the golden child, gets treated like they're the confidant and, we know too much about each other kind of thing. Now, my sister's verbalized that, yeah, she used to treat me like I was her best friend. Yeah, and you don't have a problem with that now? Because she's still doing that. You're the minion to that. And both of you were happy to abuse me and allow the man that you both know is awful. You're allowing that to happen, and nobody's sticking up for me except me. Now, that left me very ripe and ready to believe that it was all my fault, especially when I got old enough to start asking some real good questions. I got questions. I got a whole interview, 1111, that I want to do, and I wasn't allowed to. I was always told, well, that was then, or I did the best I could. That's one of my least favorite answers that somebody can give to me is, I did the best I could. Yeah, so no. If that's your best answer and your only answer and it never evolves over, 35 or 40 years, I'm going to think, yeah, you're too scary for me, 1133, to work with anymore. As an indigo that lands in a place like that and it does not go as planned, where the generational curse breaker is not going to be able to come in and do that without destroying the entire landscape, so be it. However, for me personally, I was confused as hell because I knew that my job, 1155 on the planet, my job on the planet is I'm a kind person and I'm just here to spread joy. I always felt that way, and I have gifts in a lot of different directions, and yet I could never make anything go. I could never make anything happen, and every time I had a success, somehow it was shaded somehow by somebody else. The mother would hover, or the sister would go and make these nasty ass faces, at graduation and stuff. Like, what is that face? What is that you cannot possibly be happy for me? And I always toss that off as, well, that's just a bitter ass woman, blah blah blah. It is a bitter ass woman, and you call her sister. It is a bitter ass hating woman that comes with a lot of seductress and very very kind and loving bullshit. It is true. It is true. And understand what that means to you is that is treachery that would get me killed years later. When I was 50 years old, the transition started to happen that I can't call that my work anymore whenever the contract has been broken early on, or it's been deviated from. It's been something where someone was constantly hammering down on me so that I was never fully successful. And anything that was blessed by anybody on that side of my family, if they put their approval on it, their whatever, it fell apart. It absolutely fell apart and didn't last. It didn't have the same range that it could have, or possibly really should have, because there was dark art shit happening all around me that I didn't really understand. And whether people that were in my direct lineage, as in mother, sister, know what they're doing and it's a conscious effort, I have no idea. Whether they get into the actual practice of, pretty sure that there's some of that going on at some level. I know there is, was confirmed at least once as I was going through that transition of getting the hell out of there, that my sister told me that she had to, use a spell to do something, and I thought, I don't know what that means. However, I don't feel comfortable with that. And my gifts opened up shortly after that, I'm not liking what you're saying. This is very disturbing to me. Now I understand what that means, is that even if someone would not identify themselves as a witch, or they aren't doing the jar shit or the whatever, all the weird stuff. The fact that they are in that vibrational field, they're in the bandwidth for that stuff, that's where that lives. That highly controlling, manipulative, dark, evil, demonic, devilish, just garbage that has zero respect for life, that will allow life to suffer in front of it, that will allow life to be vulnerable, and when suffering comes, they enjoy it. They throw the kid into the situation as a bait dog, because they get some weird, sick joy out of that, while also getting to enjoy that, and this is my whatever. That's my personal experience with a mother, that you left me sitting around hanging out in places where I was harmed greatly, and set me up for failure routinely, and then put her stamp of approval on places where I failed miserably. So please don't, bless me with that. However, that person was so jealous of my gifts, that I can play the piano, I sing, I'm a musician, and yet that when it came to celebrating that part of me, it was absolutely, we want to come, isn't she just fabulous, and want to lick the ice cream cone. However, excuse me, do you know what it took me to get here? And you weren't in any part of that. You weren't in any practice room. You weren't sitting in my room practicing the piano. You were the one going, you have to play that again for the 50th time, or you need a ride to rehearsal. Yeah, every day, because that's what I do. This is what I do, that you're going to come and sit. It's the story of the little red hen over and over and over again, that you want me to gather the wheat and grind the wheat, do all this stuff. I'm going to do all of it to make this cake by hand, and I'm starting from pulling stuff out of earth to create this cake that I'm baking. Would you like to help me? No, it's okay, thanks anyway. And so hen gets on going. The little red hen, she just keeps on going and does her thing, and she makes the cake. And then everybody on the farm wants to come and say, cool, it's time to eat the cake. And she says, oh no, that's not how this will go. What I said was, do you want to help me? And you told me no. So you told me no. Then go. You have no entitlement based on you live on a farm and you're a pig, or you're a goat, or you're whatever. That no, unless you were part of the creation of this, you absolutely will not have any of it. You were given the opportunity to fly right and actually help me. However, you coming over here and gobbling down my cake with me, and God forbid without me, or sitting around acting like you made my cake, oh no. Now, the child's story doesn't get that intense. However, that's how it looks whenever real dark, miserable people who are the agents of very dark and nasty energy, whether they're understanding it or not consciously, 1717, 88, then that's what you hear. Those are the conversations of people that are willing to gobble down the resources of another person. They're willing to sit and let somebody serve them. And they insist upon it. They believe they're entitled to it. My mother specifically really believed she had an entitlement to me. I would get phone calls if I started to get away too far. I lived out of the state. That was part of what happened whenever I got married, is we started traveling around for the husband's job. Cool. Then I'm out of there, because I never wanted to be in the same state that I was raised in, and now I know why, is that's treachery and fuckery at a level that I can't be here and do my life and survive. This is too little, it's too small, and it's too, suffocating, and it absolutely was. However, if I'd start to get away, and it had been more than a few days, then hey, I'd get the call on my voicemail, so if I call too much, you act like you're bothered. If I call too little, you come chasing me. It was the empath narcissist paradigm. The runner chaser is what that really is that we're going to be exchanging this runner chaser bullshit back and forth, and I'm the one that's going to get my feelings hurt. I'm the one that's going to be, hella disappointed when you come chasing after me. You'd think that a child that was constantly looking for mommy's approval for some weird ass reason, that when she called all the time, that would be great, that there would be some feeling of satisfaction, that, oh good, I put the check in the block, is how that felt. And yet it didn't feel like I ever got the check in the block. There was no satisfaction in calling, and then there was even less satisfaction, and I couldn't understand why, with getting the phone call of, where are you? And those are the words that I heard. Where are you? what are you doing? I haven't heard from you. It's your mother. And I'd think, do you have any idea how much that creeps me out? And yet I wasn't tying it together, even remotely, to say, that is really weird, 1919, that you feel that way about the woman who purportedly gave birth to you. So maybe you should think about this. And because at the time I was very busy with trying to be alive a lot rather than thriving, I was just busy to be alive and doing that fairly well if I could, get myself out of bed. And I was heavily medicated for a psychiatric condition that I don't have. I was living in a very toxic, nasty, very, very, very heavy environment where dark stuff is the prevailing force. And I was there to actually take that force apart and help these people, bridge them into something else. And the answer was no. The answer was no very early of, do you want to do this the right way? And the answer was no, fuck off and go away. And yet every time that I tried to, I was brought back into stuff. And then it turned into, okay, we're in this now, we're in the groove, we got her. And that is what it felt like, is that I was always in a terminal loop. And finally, at some point, I just gave into the fact that, okay, I guess I am crazy, I guess that's what that is. It is not that, not for me. I don't know that it is for anybody. That I believe most of the mental health stuff is really related to spiritual crisis, and it doesn't matter because I don't do, psychiatry, psychology, or therapy that way anymore at all, and I don't do the whole mental health realm in terms of Western medicine. I deal with what my soul was trying to cry out to me to do, which is separate from all of this, separate from all this shit that is trying to kill you, that is trying to stop you. And when it lacks any integrity, or it's consumed so much by the wave of hate that it's spinning around in, no matter what the most beautiful thing is that anybody ever does in their life, you always answer to the lowest common denominator within you. And if you hang out in groups of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 of you, then you're answering to the lowest common denominator of the group. And so I have to answer to my lowest common denominator too. However, other people's threshold of what they're willing to do to meet that is way darker, deeper, and shittier than I could even imagine until I started to separate from it. And I could not imagine at the time that that's what was really happening. I didn't understand it. I just knew, get the fuck out, get the fuck out, get the fuck out. A window, literally, I was sitting in a therapy session with my ex-husband, and we had a major medical crisis with one of our children going on, a life and death situation, and we were already having trouble because I was starting to peel apart the layers and go, this is not good. And when I did, we finally took it into a therapy session. Mind you, my priority is I have a child that I need to pay attention to that's having a life and death situation, and whatever this is you're doing and confused and wobbling around and, doing whatever you're doing, getting stalkery weird and shit, 22, whatever that is, let's put that aside for a second, and let me just get right here to the window of opportunity that, look, do you want to do this? Do you want to be married? Do you want to figure this out? And what I got was the window. I saw a window literally just frame around his head, and I went, oh my God, because he darted, like his eyes darted side to side, like, oh my God, you're already gone. Whatever you've done, you've been gone for a minute. It was me that was slow as shit. I got it. Thank you. And the window shut. And dude, that was a timeline jump instantly that man did not go with me. He chose to dip out, because you cannot tell me that there wasn't going to be some understanding on a spiritual level that I didn't know that that's what was going on. However, I felt the finality of what was happening is we're going to, slam this into, okay, we got a team effort here. We have a more important goal here. And when I saw that, there was question about what the team was, the team's already broken apart and separated and went somewhere and teamed elsewhere. And I still have a child that has a medical emergency, and I don't have time for whatever this foolishness is that you've already done and what you're thinking about doing with me. So I said, nope, that's it, I'm done. And I walked out, or asked him to leave. I don't know. I separated, and I said, you don't come home tonight to my house, and however you're getting home, I have no idea. And that's where it went really bad. But it opened up the whole can of worms for people to bring out their worst most miserable nightmare behavior. And it was the opportunity, yet again, in my personal situation, we've been brought to several of these crossroads. It was the opportunity for people to really see what's happening here, which is, we have an emergency here that really, I don't have time for divorce right now or bullshit, which is why I was bringing it to, can we get to the therapy office where we, reach some conclusions here? So I understood the finality of it. Even if I didn't understand, the finality wasn't going with that man. It was going away from that man. The finality was not what I thought it was. I thought we were going to be able to pull that into, you realize that the priority is a life here. And it was my priority, not the priority for anyone else that I was dealing with, unfortunately. And the why of that is that there is already a disregard for life. There was already a disrespect for life forms, especially ones of color, ones of gender, that we don't like that, and it doesn't matter. It didn't matter what. It was just a judgment, not just from him, from everybody around me that had a judgment of everyone else, including me. And because I didn't share and adopt the same ideas, I thought, well, I'm being open and I'm being allowing. And what I learned is allowing predators to continue to be predators around me was a bad idea. I lost miserably because I wasn't a shark, and I thought I was just, going to be 25, able to stay there and never really question it. And the answer to that is no, Kate, you will not be able to wait. You will not be able to stay there, because the day that you become bludgeoned enough, that you become bloody enough, then it's going to be you, and there's nothing else to chew on. Before, whenever I would bleed by 1,000 cuts, then that was a slow feed. It was a slow enjoyment and sadistic shit of watching me toil around, in my life, being obese and being crazy. I mean, literally out of my mind, and being hospitalized again and again and again for mental health issues, as well as dangerous, life-threatening illnesses constantly. No idea how much of that was the actual mastery of magicians actually working stuff in jars, or just being the agents of that kind of energy and that kind of nasty lack of integrity that you're swirling around in that pit. That's going to make you an open and available unit to move some energy towards me as a light worker who's here to destroy that stuff, or to destroy the system. I don't have any capacity to destroy people any more than anybody else does. We destroy egos, we destroy systems, we destroy the paradigm. However, I don't truly have the ability to destroy another person any more than anybody else does. However, I'm here to neutralize that shit's effect on me. And unfortunately, on the other side, people that have the power out here in 3D, they have successfully eliminated people just like me. They have for years, and this is not a new story. The witch wound, the persecution, etc., etc., etc. It's been going on for a very long time, since the beginning of time, which, okay, still not a problem, except that we still have work to do, and it doesn't matter, whether I understand it or not, unless I don't, and I'm right there on death's doorstep. And I was, and when I saw that window open up, I went, oh my God, no, I gotta go. And I went home, and it suddenly all made sense to me, more sense to me, and has been continuing to make sense to me as I've gotten 7 years away from it, that was not going to go well, because these people are puppets to dark energy that allows them to stand in their ego, where they, ride on the back of another person, and they really just suck dry the goodness of anybody that is around them, because they're so filled with hate. They're consumed with it. They love to see a bubbly, vivacious child just squashed right over the head. Let me see what that's like to go ahead and, pretend and play and stuff like that, and yet it's destroying a 5-year-old in front of your face, and you're not going to do anything about that. And try to hold the I'm your sister, I'm your mother, I'm your, it was a lot of weird stuff. And so when that came all to its fruition in that divorce process, when I started seeing it, oh my God, I've been wrong, and yet I still felt like my mission here is to bring healing, and it is. However, it's not to be in a healing contract with people who are not doing their part. There is no such thing. That is a karmic contract. And the moment that I had decided that I was done with that, I cut it off, which was about that day with that person, the man that walked away. Yeah, that contract's over. I don't have any business with you at all. I never want to see you again, and don't fuck with my money. However, it didn't go well. Absolutely fucked with my money, but he had a lot of help, and he was the puppet to a bunch of dark female energy that was happy to consume him as well because of his unhealed trauma and his unhealed bullshit that he wouldn't acknowledge. I had a decent childhood. I don't know what's wrong with you. You're the crazy one. And for as long as I'm playing scapegoat still to the system, even as a grown woman with children of my own and married, et cetera, with a degree and a whole job ability, I could never get my shit straight. I could never get it right. And it was because the dark ass people in my world were very happy to keep pounding those dark places in me and to continue to remind the people right in my home that I was worthless, etc. And I reminded them too by being worthless, by walking around incapable and stumbling and falling and, drooling and saying stupid shit and hearing voices and stuff. I mean, psychosis was horrible. However, it wasn't spiritual psychosis, unless you think of it as that's the dark shit coming all the time, or it's the addled mind of somebody that's completely befuddled with what is going on here. Nothing made sense. And for as long as dark energy, mother, sister, husband, whatever it was, as long as we're agents to that stuff, we're going to stop other people because we're enjoying the gluttony, we're enjoying the darkness, we're enjoying the sadistic nature of watching a father put a 6 or 7 year old's child down, a stepfather, down in the pool and nearly drown her ass. I gasped and gasped and gasped, and I hated that. I absolutely hated it, but that was seen as a funny thing. Well, he was just joking. No, he damn near killed me. It's a good thing I'm a strong swimmer. I became a very good swimmer. So, saying thank you for teaching me how to be an Olympic swimmer so I could survive, playing in the pool or the ocean or whatever, thank you. However, the days of us learning through brutality, me anyway, no thank you. We can learn the polarity without having to live in the polarity. Living in it is where we came out of. However, continuing to attract bullshit like that, once you know that will be a karmic contract until it's broken. It already was, because it was out of balance to begin with, So coming to the place of, I understand how everybody got where they were as best as I need to. However, 3131, coming to the place of forgiveness and all of that is absolutely necessary. And it was weird to get to because I failed my job. I'm supposed to. I'm a daughter. I'm a mother. I'm a this. I'm a that. I'm a nothing. I'm an absolute nothing label within a system where I don't belong. I am no longer relevant to that system because I no longer want to be the patsy. I no longer want to be the helper monkey to a bunch of fuck shit energy. I no longer want to be the scapegoat and the donkey that pulls life through and helps people stay in that decent karmic return where these are not wealthy people, however well-to-do enough, seated enough financially to feel very good about themselves and to feel very successful, etc. However, it was largely on the back of somebody else everywhere I looked. There isn't any real grinding that up out of the mud. That's not a lily that's growing there. That's some bullshit that came out of the mud and choked the lily to get there. So that's a very different understanding. And it still requires, as much as I don't like it sometimes, it does still require to do the work, the shadow work, to say, what can I do now to heal from that and to come to a different space with that and to really be able to accept that. And the most crucial thing that could have happened for me to accept it was to step away and say, I am not a part of that. There's no way that I will be able to heal within this system where I have somebody actively striving and working to harm me as I'm making my way out of it. So I quit talking to everybody once I figured out, okay, all right, no problem. But every single one of them that dropped away, that became an enemy, okay, I thought you were, and that's the innocence and the ignorance and the naivete of a small child who never bonded with a mother and always thought it was her fault, because that's the paradigm that would tell me that that's what that is that 3333 is that it is your fault. That's the scapegoat's position. And so as an adult, until I could get through the idea that light worker or not, healer or not, regular, schmegular, nobody of any spiritual import, doesn't matter what my role is, there's not one human being, I don't care who it is, even those people who deserve to be treated like that. There's no one that I believe is not valuable for life because I didn't decide for them to be here. How dare anyone assume they have the right to take the life of another, whether it's a person or not, cats included, rats included, mice included, bugs included. Now, the difference for me now is that I do understand that things have to be eliminated, they have to be terminated, as in threat. However, when you just automatically assume someone has no value right off the top, you have zero respect for life, that's not what that is. When you come into a situation on the offensive, ready to just mow everything down, because that's what I do. I just arrive and I take over everything about you. I consume you. That's a shark being the apex predator. And when you are in the game with an apex predator and you're not one, you don't understand until I've, swum around this tank a million times and I'm exhausted and I'm throwing up and I can't survive. And oh my God, I weigh 50 pounds by the time it's over with, and I should weigh 3,000, we pretty much exhausted everything I have here. It's super confusing. And so whenever it became very clear that window was the first one, hop right through, that's the timeline jump to be able to see a new vantage point. But it weirded me out for the longest time of what is this and how is it possible? And it's possible through matriarchs that have just bastardized what matriarchy was. Just like patriarchy, any archy that has been built, anything of the old system, the old matrix, what do they call that? The Hunger Games, anything of that old world stuff, Age of Pisces, is no longer relevant. So the apex predator isn't even a relevant thing in the community of New Earth. There's no such thing, because the collaboration of we live together, we thrive together, and we learn how to collaborate in order to get this done as a team. We're no longer, teenagers snatching and grabbing and acting like everything is ours and we're entitled to it. Our spiritual consciousness as a global community is quite young and still very much me oriented, which is fine. That's the age of Pisces. You'd expect that out of children. However, children mentality that lives in a whole grown-ass adult will get you killed. And I came very close to that. I was shocked, dismayed, disgusted, and surprised, and yet not really. I mean, that's what really shocked me the most, I think, was that I wasn't very surprised with what happened. Some very, very, very nasty, absolutely nasty stuff with my core people, my mom and my sister. Those two particularly, the one in the middle, absolutely. Eventually, when he finally, started siding with that, the stuff that came out, I was duly horrified by it, that that's really not just inhumane or cruel. I am your sister and your daughter. This is just ridiculously weird to me. However, it didn't totally shock me. It saddened me and it angered me for damn sure. However, mostly it didn't really come as a huge big old surprise to me. Exactly. What shocked me is knowing that I really wasn't sad by having to disconnect from it, and that said something to me that I wanted to investigate, and that's what I did. I went into deep investigation, 3737, into why don't I feel sad about this? Why do I feel relieved? And it's because there's nothing here to connect to. These are just bags of very dark energy that has no identity. It hasn't ever differentiated its darkness or anything enough to know. And until now, get that light in there. There wasn't enough to ever have to say, form up into something that I can see that is more than just the Martha Stewart facade management bullshit stuff that is clearly in front of me all the time. And I kind of knew that and understood it. I just thought, well, I'm loving and forgiving and allowing and all this, and yet I wasn't loving and allowing. I was loving and misunderstanding and taking on karma and taking on the heaviness and the baggage of feeling like the scapegoat who is responsible for why, I'm the lowest common denominator in my family. I'm the one that everybody's embarrassed of. I'm the one that there's something wrong with me. So as long as I sit in that bullshit energy, then I'm going to be perfect pickings for the apex predators to come by and go, and lick me a little. And when it came down to, you have darn near, eviscerated me in this tank, I'm done. I'm absolutely done. And I left the situation. It turned into such horror that it's a shame. I mean, I felt shame, not in me. I felt shame. Like, that is so shameful and so dishonorable, lacks integrity, no matter who you're doing it to. However, the fact that you did do it to me, oh my God, I have nothing I can do except walk away, because you killing me is not part of my plan. And it wasn't the part of Divine's plan either. And I didn't know one thing from another, except that I have a pure enough heart that my desire was, okay, you've been a real toll bag here. I suppose I can and I should. And I don't operate under that paradigm anymore, because the should thing is part of the old paradigm. There's nothing about love that suffocates. Love liberates. Love is freedom. And me loving people who are caging me, I'm allowing you the freedom to keep me caged, a gilded songbird. Thank you. My song is never going to be heard by anybody but you, and it won't be any good for me at all. The only one it's good for is you, and my song will never grow outside the limits of this cage. However, loving songbird just sitting there, believing that that's my thing, is I'm supposed to, be kind and loving. I couldn't ever walk away from my family. I couldn't ever walk away from, being a mom. And I can walk away from all of it, because that's not what that was. And it never came into anything more than that, because we kept getting to these crossroads and the contracts were just spit in the face. Like, there isn't one. There isn't one. I don't have to do this. Fuck you, etc. That, okay, I don't really know what all of this is, and I didn't. However, I heard very clear guidance of keep it trucking, keep it moving, and we'll debrief this later. And that is how I met my team for realsy. They've been talking to me a long time. They called that psychosis. And some of it was. However, the stuff that was guiding me to move out of that, don't talk to that person anymore, that's been working since I was a child. However, not understanding that moving the things away from you that are a threat to you personally within a shark tank, that don't threaten the sharks, they don't care how you handle that. Fine, go do that. We don't care what you do. Just don't leave the tank. And keep singing there, birdie. Keep doing what we're doing here. And you can take care of the little pests in your life or whatever that is. However, we're still going to need you to stay right here. And that was next to impossible, to be there and not see that. Once that window opened up of, oh my God, I've been sadly mistaken in believing that I was with honorable people who really cared about me. People that lack that kind of heart space to understand true intimacy and love, they are not going to ever be for me. Those are people that there's nothing I can do to help you. Not anybody else can. Not that anybody else can either. There's nothing that can help that. That is an internal process, and it's a sickness within people that turns into the psychopathy of watching people who, what is wrong with you? To leave a person homeless, to leave a person hungry, to see them on the floor, and you step over them as you walk out and just, oh, she's just a crazy bitch, etc. Watching horrible stuff happen and allowing it, because there's that bait dog. We like this. This is great fun. This is the Hunger Games. And man, I was shocked to learn that I thought we were in the Hunger Games together, that life is the Hunger Games and I got my team. You don't have shit. You have people who are watching the Hunger Games, and you're up, baby. Your number got called. You didn't even volunteer for this. Sure you did. You volunteered by coming here. And the way of breaking out of the Hunger Games is to attend that shit. In place of the young sister who can't go, who will go eventually, but that's what she did. She stood up and she answered the call. This is some bullshit. We're in the least likely to win district, and this is some bullshit. It's a rigged game, and I don't appreciate my life being put on the line. Every year we live like this in this sewer living where we have to grub and we have to grab and growl and beg, etc., 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 and sell ourselves. Well, she didn't sell herself. She stood up to the highest calling that she could find within her, which is, I'll go because she cannot. I'll go. And then she played the game very righteously and very rightfully and very cleanly. And she was also very clear of, yeah, I'm not doing this bullshit right here. And not being able to get to that place because of some weakness within me that I can't survive on my own, or that I need a mommy, or that I need a sister, or I need some connection with a name, or a platitude, or some sort of bullshit identity that was never that. What was I needing to grieve? It wasn't that. What needed to be grieved was having no mother at all and having no sibling at all. That was what was needing to be grieved, is that I did not have the family at all. Not that, poor thing with that particular person. We never made any connections. I did not love my mother the way that a mother would want to be loved, probably, nor my sister. I didn't ever feel any connection with that. None. It was a very cold and sterile Shark Tank. They're cold-blooded creatures, and a warm-blooded human swimming in that can really get hurt, and easily swayed, wobbly humans who are willing to go into the belly of the beast, be consumed, and know that, yeah, we'll spit you out after you do our work. That's a weakness, also that I have respect for and I have compassion for. However, I also don't mess with it anymore. Anybody that doesn't have the stones to stand on their own, that they're trying to kick another person down, or that they have a history of that and it still smells like that, then I don't mess with it, because we're in a time where, nope, I've got critical work to do, and people that don't want their systems broken apart. I didn't design the system, dude. I just came into it. That's like being mad at Neo or Trinity or Katniss Everdeen in the Hunger Games. It's like being mad at her that, oh no, that was what I was designated to do. That's what I'm supposed to do, and that's what I did. So the best way that I've found that I can handle that is to grieve the fact that you don't have the family, you don't have the support, and you will never have the childhood the way that you deserved it, etc. However, you can have life now, living it very differently going forward, where love is actual love. Love liberates and doesn't suffocate. And so the people that I choose to be in my world, they will need to come in understanding that. And so far, I've enjoyed living by myself, knowing that I never needed all that horseshit to begin with. However, thank you very much that I was taken to that situation so violently that I learned it. However, I don't have to keep learning it through violence and learning through that end of the polarity. I've already explored the depths of that. And so every single thing, dark and nasty, hateful, just murderous kind of shit coming out of these faces, all of this stuff, all kinds of action too. Physical action, sexual action, financial, energetic, it didn't matter. It was all happening and it was all going on, just abuse all the way around. And so coming out of that means that I don't mess with any of that, because that's the deepest, darkest part of humanity that I ever care to see. And that means over here on the other side of that polarity is the upside of it, is that I get to choose who's around me. Now I choose to have experiences that are way far from that. And the extreme is understanding that bouncing up out of that means my life is far better now, and I feel the sovereignty and the beauty of knowing that, I select who comes near me, and I select where I go. And I'm also grown up enough to know that if I stand in front of someone's face and, I'm asking, hey, do you want to go and do this? And they tell me no, or I never hear from them again or something like that, I respect the shit right out of that, okay, you don't want what I'm offering? Okay, I'm out then, because I don't have to pander myself, sell myself, or act like, a seductress or a black widow or anything else. I can just be me and know that healing happens regardless of whether or not anybody listens to me. It happens for everybody. However, I'm on a timeline where my trajectory cannot be tied with somebody else's who wants to sit around and act like they don't have a whole lot of work to do, or a whole lot of karmic baggage that, you're going to be left with that weight on your own. I'm not here to help you anymore. You've fucked that contract up so badly,